Hello and welcome to the Link Up. Today is Thursday, April the 7th. That means it's World Health Day. That's right. Our planet, our health, the theme for this year. And definitely it's going to be an interesting year for us all health-wise. But the whole idea behind this particular theme for this year, and it makes it for some interesting reading, says, are we able to reimagine a world where clean air, water and food are available to all, where economies are focused on health and well-being, where cities are livable and people have control over their health and the health of the planet in the midst of a pandemic? So it's going to be an interesting celebration this year, our planet, our health. And I like the fact that they're focusing on well-being. I think that's something that we have been doing right here on the Link Up for quite some time, taking into consideration all aspects of well-being, which of course includes self-care, looking after your mental health, finding you're happy. So it's going to be an interesting day today. Why? Because we're going to touch base with some of our overseas Link Up resources. From the UK, Dr. BELFIELD BURGESS, Dr. BELFIELD Don Burgess, and there he is in his scrubs. And Don is the A&E consultant for London's North West University Healthcare Trust. We're going to find out how they're doing now, since they have literally, I think, opened up in every sense of the word, and find out a little bit more about this new variant of the variant Omicron. And then we're going to take a trip over to South Africa and touch base and link up with Dr. KATLEGO MOTHUDI. And Dr. K is the managing director of the Board of Healthcare Funders of South Africa, well, of Southern Africa. How has the pandemic affected how they do business, and how has it impacted them? What kinds of changes have they had to make in their MO, their modus operandi? So we're going to find out about that and how he's doing, and find out if, you know, this new variant is there, and how are they readjusting to the whole impact of this new variant. And basically, are they keeping up with the protocols, or are they like most of the rest of the world and like, what protocols? Anyway, that's just me being a little snarky. I'm so sorry. Then an interesting chat that I'm looking forward to with organizers of a talk and seminar entitled The World in Transition. Michael Rudder, Karen Swanson, and James TUDOR. And they're going to have two guests coming into the island. And there's going to be that's Karen Swanson and James TUDOR. And these are their guests who will be coming into the island, Al and Jeannie Fick. And so we're going to find out, or is it Fike? I'll find out from them the correct pronunciation. But we're going to find out all about this seminar and all about the world in transition through their eyes. As usual, I like to tell you, sit watching with a notepad and a pen if you can, because it's going to be another highly informative and entertaining Link Up. So we like to hear from you as well. Remember that we're streaming on YouTube, on Facebook, and you can share your comments and your questions in real time at CBC Barbados on Facebook. Coming up after the break, Dr. Burgess. Dr. Belfield Don Burgess is an A&E consultant with London's Northwest University's Healthcare Trust. And he's joining us now from an interesting location. Welcome to the Link Up again, Don. Nice to have you with us.
Good morning, Peta.
Good morning.
And finally, I could say thank you for having me in Barbados.
So nice to know you made it home safely. It's been quite a journey. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about that nearing the middle to the end. But I'd like to backtrack a little bit about the journey so far in London and the UK. We've, I think, welcomed them to our shores for cricket recently, and we've seen them walking around maskless. So this is obviously something that within the UK is now a thing of the past, masks. So talk to me about how the UK has opened up and still we are in the midst of a pandemic.
Well, I think the UK is an exercise in when politics supersedes actual medicine. And the decisions have been based predominantly on politics and pretty populist decisions. Having had the last week an opportunity to see another part of Europe, their position is completely different. Now, the UK having decided to open up and having a perspective of we've got to live with it, that means that we have to deal with the consequences. So what we've got now is overcrowded hospitals, the absence of beds, high infection rates, although that seemed to have plateaued now. And in recent weeks, we had an increase in death rates as a consequence. But it's decided purely on the basis of politics that, like everything else, we have to move on. So it's just a question of timing.
But they'd be the first to tell you that they're taking their timing from the beat of the drum of the populace. Isn't that what they say the public wants? To go back into things the way they used to be?
I presume everybody wants to live the way they used to live in 2019. Of course we do. But and nobody wants to die or end up in a hospital. The thing is, for a lot of people, it's relatively unpredictable. And although you would love to be able to go out and do what you want to do, if you had an absolute surety that you were going to get sick and spend time in hospital or you were going to die, of course you wouldn't. But I think from a political point of view, you have to look at the economics of it as well as health, and you have to look at the next election. So that's what they're doing. But you can't. There is a middle ground.
Sorry.
No, I'm saying there's a middle ground.
You have I think a healthcare system that many always use as an example when it comes to, looking after the care of your citizenry. But how has this impacted, though? Because if your healthcare system is one which pays for most everything, certainly financially, this is a big risk for opening up and continuing the numbers as they are.
I think there's going to be a massive financial cost, but that's going to be among other things that are hidden. So that becomes a political point. The issue from a healthcare perspective is that hospitals are overcrowded. And as a consequence, when you go into an emergency room, the emergency room has probably got a large percentage of their beds or bays occupied with patients who are waiting on a hospital bed. So that eventually affects the mortality rates and the morbidity rates. I don't think they're particularly concerned with that. And then there's obviously a financial cost to that. So that becomes less of an issue. Now, what you see it as is tremendously long wait times. So for us, it used to be that a really bad start of day would see at the handover that you have patients who've been waiting 2 hours. It's not uncommon these days to go to handover and you have patients who've been waiting for 7 hours to see an A&E doctor. That is not uncommon anymore. I think the percentage of people who've been seen within the 4-hour target, national 4-hour target, is the lowest that it's ever been. The rate of what we call 12-hour breaches, where somebody who, once you've made a decision to admit somebody, then you have to find a hospital bed, and you have 12 hours to do that within a sensible standards. That 12-hour breach is a really, really almost criminal in healthcare services in this system. And actually, the 12-year rate is the highest it's ever been. The 12-hour rate is the highest it's ever been.
Wow.
So the system is teetering, but the people who do get seen still get quality care.
Right. So you are an A&E consultant, accident emergency consultant. So what kind of, okay, what was triage like before this debacle? And what, what advice now are you giving to make it better? Because, hey, with all due respect, wait time of 7 hours, we kind of sort of accustomed to that. So, and even longer.
Yeah. I think I can't compare the QEH with different resource levels.
No, and we won't. I'm not either. I'm just saying.
But for us, this is a very strange place, a very odd set of territory. We would have traditionally the odd day. You'd have the odd day when you started and you handed over in the morning, and you had 3-4 hour break, 3-4 hour wait, and that would be maybe twice a week. In the winter season, maybe a bit more. And sometimes there'd be weeks when you wouldn't have anybody waiting more than 2 hours in the morning when you hand it over. But when you have very stressful weeks in recent months where every day the minimum wait is probably 4 hours in the morning, and the night staff, we have more night staff than we've ever had to see these patients, but the wait's longer. And obviously you can't keep throwing more resources at it in terms of an A&E point of view, because the issue is not A&E, the issue is what happens downstream.
Right.
So if you add something that creates more patients, like having poorly managed disease in the community, that just puts more burdens.
Right.
Something that we can avoid in Barbados.
Yeah, but how then do you balance then the other things like the non-communicable diseases, because people don't stop being ill from other things because of COVID. I mean, illness still continues. So how do you deal with that?
Well, you have to appreciate the fact that when you start stretching a system, you reach a certain point where your capacity to manage is diminished, and therefore your results start becoming worse. So your morbidity, as we would call it, meaning how much people get sicker, and your mortality, which is obvious, those things get worse as you put more and more pressure on the system. And eventually, as we saw in, for example, Italy and Iran in the first waves of COVID, that you completely overwhelm the system becomes overrun. And what happens is you have people who die that shouldn't have died. There is obviously that, and you're going to see that especially in the non-communicable diseases. Then there are the people who will hesitate to come to hospital simply because they think, I'm not going to wait for 6 hours. And that means that when they eventually do come to hospital, whether they've got an illness or a disease, it's probably a lot more advanced than it would have been if they'd come in initially.
Right.
So we have to deal with that as well. So things like cancers, things like people with new diagnosis of diabetes and hypertension, they're much more likely to have more damage and higher rates of death as a consequence of having these significant waits. It's just numbers,
Yeah.
because a lot of people right now will try to speak to their GP, and it's a completely public system. So you're trying to speak to your GP to get seen for something that's relatively minor. Now the GPs are overwhelmed, so if you need to get an appointment, you have to call twice a day. So for example, I recently had COVID. Now I work in the healthcare system, but I need to get a sick letter, a return to work letter to say when I'm going to be back at work. But when I call my GP for five working days, I could not actually get through to have an appointment, because the only time you can get an appointment, you have to call at 8 a.m. or 1:30. So if you call at 8:20 and the queue is 25 people or 10 people or however many people, I think their queue limits the numbers. Um,
Goodness.
you reach a certain point where by the time you actually get through, it's now 9 o'clock. And if somebody does answer the phone, they say, well, we can't give you an appointment now. You need to call back at 1:30. So this went on until day 5.
Goodness.
And at which point in time, I am speaking to a young GP who probably graduated 15 years after I did. And they're saying, well, what do you want me to do? I don't want you to do anything. I just want you to give me a return to work. No, I don't want to waste your time. This is what I want. And you can crack on with calling the next person, because far more people than ever are calling the GPs to get appointments. So it's not simply a question of the fact that the GPs have less time. The GPs have far more people making phone calls.
Right.
And there's also the issue of basic common sense. Because a lot of the times when people are unwell, you go to the supermarket, you go to the pharmacy, you get something off the shelf. You have a different generation of people who isn't necessarily accepting any responsibility. So they have to see a doctor to tell them to go buy a packet of paracetamol. So this is quite common. So
Right.
there's a lot of doctor time and nurse time, especially, that's taken up where people refuse to accept any sort of personal responsibility for themselves.
Right. Well, you did mention the fact that you have recovered from it. So I certainly would love to find out what it was like being on the other side of COVID. So we'll do that.
It's
Yeah, after the break.
yes.
We'll do that after the break. you've just joined us, we're chatting with Dr. Burgess, an A&E consultant of London's Northwest University Healthcare Trust, and he just shared with us that he's, now recovering. Well, he's recovered from having COVID, and me, as usual, I want to know what it's like being on the other side. So, what was your COVID journey like, your personal journey?
Well, I'd like to start by saying that I grew up in a village, so I have kind of a village mentality. I check on my friends check on me, so I will ping Barbados representatives in London, the people at BHTA, the High Commissioner, and just check how is everybody doing. So a few weeks ago, I was going to hospital with a colleague's husband who was needed some support for his care. And when we were there and we were wearing masks because we were in hospital, and because I work in A&E, I'm very cautious, so I don't go anywhere in public without a mask. On the way back home, I started to get this funny headache, like I was being pinched in the top of my head. It's quite unusual because I'm not somebody who gets sick. And by the evening, I was feeling a bit odd, feeling quite off in the night. Didn't sleep properly. Got up the next morning because I was the lead consultant on the floor both weekend days, Saturday, Sunday. So I went to work and I said to one of the nurses, look, I've done this lateral flow 3 days in a row and it's been negative. But I do not feel well. I think I had fever last night and chills and rigors and everything else. And she said, let's do this other test that we do in A&E called an ID now. So because when she had it, her lateral flows were negative, but the ID now was positive.
Wait, pause. What are lateral flows?
Lateral flows are the quick tests that you can do at home.
Oh.
Yeah. They're ready in half an hour.
Oh, okay.
But you assume that they're a bit more sensitive and less specific. So generally speaking, if your lateral flow is negative, your PCR is going to be negative, generally speaking. But you may have a false positive. So that's how it's designed.
Okay.
But I didn't feel well, and when she said that, we did the ID now, which is a bit more accurate lateral flow in the department. And normally you get a result back in about 40 minutes, because I asked the guy who was doing the test, when he did it, I asked him, how long is this going to take? He said, oh, we get a result back in about 40 minutes. So I'm hanging around. I've done the morning handover with the juniors, and I said, I'm just waiting until I get this result. And 5 minutes later, the guy comes back and he says, I have your result. I said, how the hell can you have my result? You told me it takes 40 minutes. He said, no. When you have a high viral load, it comes back like that.
Oh.
So I had a positive result in 5 minutes, at which point in time I had to tell my colleagues, I'm really sorry, but I need to go. So I'm off the floor, I go home. And I had 2 really, really horrendous days where you're nauseous, you have fever, chills, sweat. So 1 minute you're under a blanket, next minute you're not. 1 minute you run into the shower to cool off, next minute you have to turn up the heat. Poor appetite. Luckily, I never lost my sense of smell or taste.
Interesting.
But I didn't have any appetite, but I forced myself to eat because I said, you know what? I remember my mother always saying, your strength goes through your mouth. so I just ate some food and drank.
Right.
But it was truly, truly bad. I mean, when you get up to go to the bathroom, you get up to go to bed, and you're holding on to the furniture because you just feel so weak. That was really horrendous. But it tapered off quickly, and I would say thank you to the vaccinations, because I've had 3. So it tapered off quite quickly, but what I was left with was a really horrendous residual cough. And even when my result came back as negative, I'd have coughing bouts. So you wake up in the middle of the night, you can't sleep properly because you're coughing all the time. And all of these bad nights, walking around in the days, if I sit down, I start to cough. And it's really funny because I got here last night, and when you're talking about actual health and environment and the contributions of these things, coming from a city that has a lot of air pollution, so once you open your windows, the air is polluted, to Barbados, where last night I had moist, sea air, that's fresh. I could already notice a change in the cough. I've coughed a hell of a lot less since last night.
Right.
Don't feel like coughing now at all.
Okay.
You know,
But
so hopefully a little bit of time in Barbados and I'll be back from 95 to 100%.
good. I remember when I nosily asked you if you knew which variant you had, and you said it was Omicron.
Yes.
Not the one that was like the dreaded Delta. But there was a phrase that you used to describe it, and it has stuck. You said that Omicron is stickier than dog doo-doo.
Yeah, it's stickier than dog do. Trust me.
What?
I mean,
Okay, for the viewer who is watching this interaction between the two of us, I got it, but what were you really trying to say?
so the point of that I would make to people is Omicron is so much more infectious because of the changes that it has genetically. Now, bearing in mind that I spent 2 years working in the department that was first hit in the UK, the department that was hardest hit in the UK in terms of COVID patients, never got infected. A large percentage of our staff never got infected. And within a 3-day period, four of the consultants in our 2 departments who did not actually interact with each other, so we got it from 4 different sources, 4 of us got COVID in a 3-day period. And there was no explanation other than the fact that this thing is so infectious. And for me, who doesn't really interact a lot with anybody, I don't go anywhere as such, because my thing is my spare time is to come to Barbados. And if I'm fooling around doing anything else, it's at home. If I'm going to a business, I'm wearing a mask. I don't go. Unlike the rest of the population, who are trying to deal with normal, if I get on public transportation, I wear a mask. If I go in a store, I wear a mask. Right now, I'm in a distinct minority.
Right.
But I persist in that. So for me to actually turn up positive, bearing in mind that I went to hospital on the same day when I started to have symptoms, right? But I was wearing a mask from the time I left home, all my interactions with my friend, and when I got back home. He never got COVID, so I didn't give it to him. But at some point in time in the process, I got infected. But the minute that BA2 appeared on the scene, that coincided with the last bit of opening up. So the last bit of opening up was responsible for about 20% increase in infections, and then BA2 added another 30% on top of that.
Right. Can we talk about this BA2? Is that the correct, because it doesn't really have a name. So,
yeah, it's a subvariant of Omicron.
Okay, so it's not a variant of COVID.
Yeah, so you've had all of these Greek letters that we've all learned Greek in the last 2 years.
Yes.
Right. So Omicron was the significant, most infectious variant that we've come across. BA2 is a subvariant of Omicron.
Okay.
So it's like your cousin's child, right? And it's got, I think, 21 genetic changes to a standard Omicron virus. And those 21 changes, as we've seen, makes it more infectious, but also it gives you a broader scheme of symptoms.
Oh.
So, yes. So from day one, the thing that we noticed, people who saw a whole lot of COVID, we said that really there are only a handful of diseases that we've seen in a medical career that give you this many symptoms. HIV and lupus being 2 of them that give you symptoms everywhere, all sorts of things. But Omicron came with a lot more cardiac symptoms than we'd seen before. And what we're seeing now is a lot of people turn up with jaundice. So they have more liver symptoms.
Yeah, oh my goodness. Right.
It's interesting. My hospital that I work at, we have a catchment area about the size of Barbados, probably just over the size of Barbados. And obviously we have a sister hospital that has another 200,000 people in their catchment area. So overall, I think we probably have twice the catchment area of Barbados. Plus, our education system means that literally every minute my phone goes ping, ping, ping with another educational thing from our group, because we're very good on training. I need to give you a plug on that afterwards. But actually, what it means is that we discuss every current bit of information, every new bit of information. And this morning we were having a discussion about the fact that not only are we seeing a lot more cardiac presentations, but we're seeing a lot more liver presentations. We're seeing a lot more people turning up with actual jaundice.
Wow.
It's quite interesting.
What I don't understand though, Don, forgive me for jumping in. Okay, you've got COVID-19. COVID-19 now, what? Let me put it in my terms, okay? Has a child, and the child now is Alpha.
Yeah. Alpha
has a child which is Delta, or was Delta another child of COVID-19?
Yes. So Delta is another child of COVID-19.
Okay, so those were the two children, right?
Yes, all of these variants are the next generation. Right. So when you get Omicron BA2, that's sort of a grandchild of the original COVID.
Right. But Alpha and Delta are still around, or have they died?
They're still around, but they're going to be present in tiny numbers. They're going to be present in tiny numbers, because what happens is, I mean, these things, nature competes against itself. So the strongest always wins, or the fittest, not necessarily the strongest, but the fittest always wins. And in terms of viruses and infectious diseases, the one that's able to infect faster, allow the host to stay alive for longer, and actually be easier to survive in different circumstances, that one will always predominate.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So if you die very quickly outside the body, you're not going to survive, right? You need to, and if you kill your host, like I remember working when we had SARS, the first COVID, right? SARS 1, if you could call it that, and that was too deadly, and therefore it burnt itself out, because if you're not going to stay, if your host, which is human beings, doesn't stay alive long enough to contact other people and pass you on, you lose your host, so you're dead. So right. COVID-19 came along, and what was impressive about it, and what made it far more deadly, was that you were very infectious before you actually got horribly sick. So before you actually had symptoms, you were very infectious. When that allowed you to infect other people long before anybody knew that you were sick. And then B, you lingered. So people would be sick, and the deaths would normally peak 2 weeks after you initially got sick. And that gave you a lot of time to infect other people. Nature is amazing. You have to look at it and tip your hat.
It's just, it's incredible where we have come from. And me being just a layperson who, wants to share the correct information with everybody, making the point to read up on all of the WHO, PAHO, CDC, blah, blah. And it was like somehow sometimes it was just too much. But you can't stop following all of the information. So
absolutely. I mean, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was saying, so what do you know now that you didn't, and what do you and your colleagues now wish that you had done differently? Or are you still learning?
I mean, we're still learning, but I think in terms of knowledge of this particular disease, we've reached a certain plateau. We will find out more detail. There's, of course, because the more you delve, the more detail you'll find. but actually the bulk of what we're going to find out, we've already got it. But there's always a lot more processing of information. So we could find out a lot more, but we have so much information that we've already accrued that we need to process it still. I think I wish we had identified early on how transmissible it was in terms of the aerosols, because a few of my friends would have stayed out of intensive care. A couple of my friends would still be alive. And I think we probably, especially in the UK, we would have saved tens of thousands of the elderly. I wish if we had. I don't think it was possible to get testing done any sooner given the political constraints. But I think if we'd focused on that earlier and we had a bit more competence in that arena, more people would have died in terms of the system. Now, as far as the vaccination side of it, I think that it was impossible for that to happen any sooner, and still remain safe. And luckily, when we had the first SARS and a couple other viruses that we've had in the past, people had started doing research, and there was a lot of background. And so, you start working on something, and then when it seems like you don't need it anymore, you have a choice of either throw it in the garbage or put it on a shelf.
Right.
And luckily for us, those people actually put it on a shelf. So the next time something similar came around, we were ready to dive in and dust off the notebooks and dust off the system and say, okay, we've got 3/4 of this ready. We just need to finish up the last 25% more specific to this particular virus, and we can get treatments ready.
How's testing?
So
testing now in terms of do people go get tested? What's the procedure there? Okay.
Well, again, that's one of the farcical things in terms of politics. Now, obviously, these things come at a price. Of that, there's no doubt. They come at a price. If you're going to have mass testing, there's mass expense. There is still community testing if you have to have a COVID test, and you can book it. There are fewer places, but things like the regular lateral flows that people are accessing are much more difficult. So people who are healthcare workers and who work in social care, work in nursing homes and that sort of thing, it's going to be harder for them to get lateral flow tests, because normally you should do 2 lateral flows a week, so that when you go to work, you know that you're not going to work positive to infect other vulnerable people.
All right.
And the government had a philosophy that said that people who work in healthcare and social care should be vaccinated. So it was mandatory for both. The social workers, some people left social care because they didn't want to get vaccinated, and it was fine for them to go. I have no problem with that, and I'm glad that they went. Because if you're working with the vulnerable and you're not prepared to do any sort of sacrificing to keep them alive, you're probably in the wrong job. The government backed off the NHS, the healthcare kind of mandatory vaccinations because things change in terms of the science and the numbers, and B, politics said that if you're already short-staffed and you already have a lot of disaffection in terms of salaries and working conditions and all of that, anything that's going to make that worse is probably not a good idea politically. So they made a political decision to withdraw the mandatory vaccinations for staff.
Wow.
But it's other people still have it, and what we're working with is trying to optimize what we have and what we have, the systems that we have available. I work with the most amazing bunch of people, and the things that we put in place to improve care, to check ourselves, especially to make sure that we adapt and we improve and we train everybody else. Those structures are incredible, and it's it's noticeable because a lot of the people who train with us as juniors come back to work with us as consultants.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
so many of them want to come back. I mean, and this is where I'm going to throw out a bit of a plug, because a couple of years ago, one of my mates from Barbados, he actually told me about somebody who was working with him here, a young Bajan, and I encouraged her to come, and I told her who to speak to, how to get it to happen, and now she's just about to go into her formal emergency medicine training.
Excellent.
So she'll be a fully accredited emergency medicine consultant in a couple of years, in a few years. Now we have the capacity to pull more people into the system, because my trust, we get people from India, all parts of Asia, and all parts of Africa. So why not get some people from Barbados or the rest of the wider Caribbean to come and work with us for a little bit and get into the formal training system?
Excellent.
If they can't manage to get into the formal training system with UE.
Right. Excellent. That's good news. But one of the last things I wanted to, touch base with you on, I've noticed now that we've seemed to have done away with the phrase herd immunity for many reasons, I guess. Now we're hearing living with COVID. So in your professional opinion, what does that mean?
In order for herd immunity to actually be a thing, you have to have a very, very large percentage of the population be resistant to a particular organism. Now, that is a number that varies from organism to organism, and it depends on the infectiousness of that particular organism. Depends on how good your resistance is, or how good your immunity is when you actually do acquire it.
Mm-hmm.
We have improved the immunity of the population by inventing vaccines, but the immunity does taper with vaccines, so that's why we have boosters. And this is still a relatively young field, and we're still learning, because different diseases that we get exposed to will require different numbers and types of vaccines. So, for example, we have diseases that require a single vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
So you get one BCG, and that's it for TB, for pretty much life. But if you're going to work in the healthcare sector and you're trying to stay away from hepatitis B, for example, it requires 3 vaccines before you get what's effectively permanent immunity. We're still discovering that about COVID, and if it changes so rapidly, like the normal flu changes rapidly, we may come down to a point where to get immunity requires an annual vaccination.
Okay.
People need to realize that a country like Barbados with so much chronic disease, we're lucky that we have warm weather, because if we had sort of a winter season where the temperature drops, people's immunity drops, you're in enclosed, stuffy places and viruses start pulling around, a lot more people get pneumonia and die. A lot more people die from the flu. Now, it's less important here to have flu vaccines, for example. But for the very elderly and people who are significantly immunocompromised, it's probably a good idea to give you some immunity. But you have to change those vaccinations every year. It's not the same vaccination because the virus mutates. And it's going to be the same with COVID. It's probably going to be the same, because if you look at the fact that we've gone through the whole Greek alphabet, it keeps changing. There are going to be new mutations, and we may come to a point where the vaccinations that we got don't offer maximal immunity against the next latest greatest variant. So we have to get a different booster, and we have to keep doing the sensible things. I mean, Barbados has been doing reasonably sensible things in terms of the indoor mask wearing and all of that. As I said, in the UK right now, that's pretty much a non-starter. You see a tiny percentage of people actually doing that. But I was in Germany a couple times in the last week, and at least in Frankfurt, when you go out in public, everybody has a mask, and not just a mask. I mean, when you go into any significant building, they insist on a surgical mask or an FFP2. And some businesses, some buildings did not allow you even with a basic surgical mask. It had to be an FFP2. You know, so it's about doing the sensible things, and that way we can have a normal life. I mean, we need to keep doing the sensible things because we need to get the kids back into school here in full-time education and not have reasons why they can't. You know?
Okay. I know that you just took a trip, and so I'd be, nosy enough to ask you, what are they doing that's different? And I'm going to just take a quick break, and then I'm going to come back. And bear that in mind. I want to know where you went, not necessarily you went, but where you went, how were they living with COVID when we come back? You're watching a very special link up today as we make connections. We're making connections with our friend, Dr. Don Burgess. He's an accident and emergency consultant with London's Northwest University Healthcare Trust. That's quite a mouthful, but what he does is very critical to, as he said, a catchment area which might be twice our size. So, very most important and vital in the whole fight against this pandemic. So I was being nosy because I know that he just recently took a trip, and I wanted to find out what life was like there. How are they doing? What are they doing perhaps differently or, the same? So what was it?
Well,
like?
it's interesting because I've had pretty much calamitous the last week and a half in terms of travel, and trying to get to Barbados. However, what I'd say is you can notice the difference the minute you get out of the UK. So you turn up at the airport in London. Effectively, everybody's supposed to wear a mask because it's the airport and you're indoors. You have a few people who wear theirs properly. You have people who don't wear them properly. They wear them when they're going through, official gates or whatever, and they have to be reminded sometimes. Some people just don't wear them because everybody, this whole thing of choice where you get to say, well, I have an excuse why I can't wear a mask. Well, most of it's nonsense. People just choose. You can go online and print off a letter that says you have a mask exemption. So people don't necessarily wear them. Now, when you get on the planes to go, you have no choice. You have to wear them. Yes. And then when you get to Germany, right? You get to Germany, you get off the plane, and actually what's happening then when you get off the plane is that you walk through the airport, everybody's wearing a mask. There are no exceptions. The masks are worn properly. That's just it. People just go about their business. They're very matter of fact. They don't waste time on unnecessary things. That's why I always like Germany. Now, when you yes, so having been forced to spend a night in Germany last week and then have to go shopping the next day to actually find some clothing because my clothing was somewhere stuck, as I was
shoot.
stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Trials and
calamity.
tribulations, yes.
Trials and tribulations. I think I don't know how many planes I've been on and how many tickets I've booked, but it's a lot. And so you go shopping, you get on public transportation, everybody wears a mask. Right now in the UK, you get on public transportation, mask wearing is probably 10% right now, if so much.
10%.
Yeah, in Frankfurt at least, it's 100% in public transportation, 100%. So that's going to be seen in terms of infection rates. Absolutely, it's going to be seen in infection rates. When you go into buildings, commercial buildings, there's still signs on the door, and as I said earlier, most places they insist on either a surgical mask or an FFP2. So the standard cotton mask that most people in Barbados will wear, you can't go into a store. It's impossible. You're not allowed. And I tried, so in the absence of actually having any of my clothing, I tried to go buy some clothing in a shop. And when I went into this big shop, it's sort of looking like what Cape Shepherd used to be back in the day. And I got to the door and the security guy says, well, I'm really, really sorry, but your surgical mask is not appropriate.
What?
Right? You can only, the minimum to come into this store is an FFP2.
What's an
So
FFP2?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we into the N95s, the 94s,
Yeah,
and so.
the N95 is the equivalent of an FFP3.
Oh,
So that's a little bit higher specification. That's kind of a medical grade kind of thing that you're using. Now, when I'm at work, we have to wear, in a normal setting, we wear a surgical mask. If we're going to a place where we have aerosol generation, where there are likely to be COVID particles in the air in any number, we would wear an FFP3 or an equivalent. But their rules were an FFP2, slightly down, but a little bit better than a surgical mask. And they were adamant. And he said, well, the rules are going to change next week for the store. You'll be able to come in with a surgical mask next week. I said, but buddy,
you will be here next week.
I want a shirt and underwear. You understand? I want a shirt and underwear. I can't wait till next week. I'm trying to get out of this country because if I'm not sure about getting to Barbados, I'd rather go back to London and sleep in my own bed. And but eventually I did find it. But when you look at the doors in the shops, the doors do state most doors state either an FFP2 or a surgical mask, and they stick by it. There is no question. There is no mask exemption. They're very disciplined people, and I think that's the example that we need to follow in Barbados, obviously.
Right. Are there
Because
numbers showing that though?
yes,
Yeah.
their infection rates have always been less than the UK in terms of actual rates of acceleration and spikes and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
They've always been less because they're obviously for the most part more disciplined, and they set rules and they stick by them. So once the rules are in place, people tend to stick to the rules more, and therefore you get better results.
What about the other countries in Europe? How are they doing? How is Italy and France? I know that there were some places in China which were closing down again.
They have a different social structure. They have a different social structure in, for example, China. I have colleagues in Italy and France and a lot of Western Europe. And in public places, indoors, they tend to be pretty rigid about the mask wearing. I think Italy had slipped away. They kind of slipped away for a while, and you had you have right-wing factions that tend to be anti-everything. So it's the same thing in France, where you go and you have protests about wearing masks or whatever. But the science says it makes sense, it works. So for the most part, indoors, they'll stick by it. And the changes in those things happen more aggressively. If they start to spike, they go back to it. They don't hold a hard and fast position if the science says otherwise. And that's the difference between them and what's happening in the UK. And because you have different variants arrive at different places at different times. So when it's your turn to have a BA2 spike, your spike is going to be reduced significantly if everybody's wearing masks.
Yes.
And because one variant effectively overtakes everybody else, almost everywhere on the planet is going to end up with a BA2 spike. Of that, there's no doubt. An Omicron BA2 spike. So it's just a question of when it's your turn to have your spike. If everybody's doing it, it's smaller. Yeah. But you will have a spike.
And we've got to learn to live with it. This is the reality.
Absolutely. We need to follow the scientific things and keep doing what works. And actually individuals need to not learn how to manage medicine from Facebook University and Google College, and actually listen to people who've spent some time assessing real research and doing things in a sensible fashion. Because the reality of it is that it takes years of training to be able to assess scientific papers and studies properly. It cost me a lot of money to learn how to be certified as how to assess a scientific paper. And then when somebody keeps quoting something that they saw on YouTube or some obscure website, with, like, for example, the whole ivermectin nonsense, when we've had so many studies that said, including the last big study that said, there is no benefit. You're wasting your time. Right? You're wasting your time, you're wasting your money. You're wasting society's resources trying to plug stuff that doesn't work. Right. When actually the things that work are wear a mask when you're in a crowded place, especially indoors.
And I can tell you, I recently had that experience where my car was down. I got a lift from someone, and the next day they called and said, "Bad news, P, I have COVID." And I'm like, oh, good Lord. And so this means now that I've got to, isolate myself, which I did. But then it was 3 or 4 days after their positive that I had to go get my test, and I was negative. And I put that down to the fact that we were both masked.
Absolutely.
We were, yes, in an enclosed space in a vehicle, but we were both wearing our masks. And if you follow the protocols, you do stay safe. Yes, there will be people for whom that is not true. But then being vaccinated, we've had the proof that, it makes it a little less difficult if you do get it. So we've just got to learn to live with it. My concern going forward, though, is if we do have to take these vaccines on an annual basis, that once again there will be those who won't, but that's their right. That's their right.
The thing is, Peter, like any other medication, if you're diabetic and you don't take your diabetic tablets or your insulin, and you have to deal with the consequences of your diabetes, that's your responsibility. It's a decision. You can choose it. The objection happens in situations like ours and in the UK, where you have socialized medicine, where your idiotic decision, the cost of your idiotic decision, has to be borne by the rest of the population. That's where we have a bit of a problem. Everybody's allowed to make bad decisions. That's freedom. But if the rest of the society has to bear the burden of your bad decision, we need to look at that. And I think there are places right now, I think Australia, New Zealand to some extent, parts of the Middle East, where if you don't get vaccinated and you get infected, there's a different financial burden.
That I can
because
understand.
yes,
Yeah.
you can't have rights without responsibilities.
Yeah, that I can
You know,
understand. Hmm.
and this has to be part. This has to be part for the course of going forward and living with COVID. Because, I mean, if you look at how children's education has been absolutely messed up in the last couple of years, right? We can't have any more of this. Let's stay home and do this homeschooling stuff and waste time, because that's counterproductive for most children. And we need to get the kids in school. But it's a simple thing. Get them in school, get them wearing masks, get them wearing masks in public transportation, and that's fine. Because you know what?
Okay.
The rest of Europe is doing it with the mask mandates. They don't have any 2 meter rules. They're sitting in classrooms like, as they were before. They don't have any particularly high rates of infection with the school kids because of the mask mandates, and it works. And a lot of the school kids are vaccinated anyway.
Right.
You know, so they don't have significant problems. They're not creating more problems. They're finding solutions rather than creating problems, and that's what we need to do. We need to find solutions.
Right. Thank you so much, Don. It's always a pleasure, you know, when we get an opportunity to chat. And I hope that we do get an opportunity to see each other this time, you know, on this visit. But I'm glad that you overcame your upfront, you know, meeting with dear Mr. Omicron. But good to see you.
So I mean, if you, you know, it's my pleasure to be here with you, Peter. It's absolutely my pleasure. Hopefully, I'll find you on a balcony somewhere with some products that. Well, I will have some product made from sugarcane, and and you know, in between fighting with Omicron and all of the obstacles in terms of airlines and whatever security services and everything else to try to get here, you know, I can say that literally one night with some moist, fresh Barbados air, and I already feel better.
Good. I am glad. Welcome home, hon. Welcome home.
Thank you. Thank you. You have a great day.
Will do. Will do. More to come right here on the Link Up after the break. Very interesting chat just now with Dr. Belfield Burgess, and making connections is what we are looking at today. And I did tell you in the opening that we are going to take a look at the world in transition, and that's a seminar and a talk that's coming up. And I'm certainly looking forward to this as we chat with some of the joint organizers. We have Michael Rudder and James Tudor and Karen Swanson will join us shortly. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. It's lovely to have you join me this Thursday. Now, can you explain to me your concept of the world in transition? Either of you can go first. Michael, would you want to?
Well, it's not my concept per se. It is a concept of Albert and Jean Fike. These are two Canadians who live in Vancouver who reached this conclusion through their passionate, intense, and sincere prayers to the Father. And as you know, we all have guardian angels, guides, and whatever. And they have been able to connect to not only the guardian angels and their guides, but to other celestials who bring them information. And the one very important piece of information is love. That is the connecting force of the universe, not only of the world. And let me digress for a moment. You know, people talk about the universe and they say it's infinite. But somehow we have scientists every year or so saying they're getting this information from the edge of the universe. Not sure where that is, because man does not have tools to measure infinity. Now they're putting up a telescope, they say will bring light from the first Big Bang or something. If it's infinite, friends, it's infinite. So there are things going on in the rest of the universe. There's some of those things have happened, transitions have happened in other places. Now it's the turn of the Earth. The Earth is really just a grain of sand in the whole universe. But again, some people say, are we alone? Give me a break. So we're not alone. We are not alone in this universe. We have people who live on other planets who visited us, and some of those persons have interacted with Jean and Al Fike, and with me and others. Yes, with me. Wait, it is Dr. Duppies. No, I don't speak. I don't speak to Duppies, but let me say, the spirits which we encounter in good faith and in love are from the celestial section of the universe. Celestial meaning just that, closer to God, very much closer than we are.
Okay.
And these are individuals who have come to Al Fike with information about the world in transition. Now, we all know about earth changes. We've heard about earth changes. We've heard about climate change. And what essentially is going to happen, there's going to be a lot more of those earth changes. And we are told it will not be recognizable for what the earth was in the past.
Okay.
But in addition to that, because of the love, this force in the universe, and remember, we say God is love, but somehow then we turn around and say, vengeance is mine, and God has anger. If he's love, he can't be all those human things. So God is love, and he has a special love, that love energy, which we have called divine love. As more and more people and organizations and whatever across this earth of ours receive this divine love, so we will begin to relate more harmoniously to other people, our neighbors, not only our neighbors. Well, as you know, when Jesus said, love your neighbors yourself, he wasn't only speaking about, wait, Miss Susie next door, I love you, you know. He wasn't only saying that. He was saying your neighbors.
Right.
So that is love, and I let James carry on with the concept of
Certainly.
love.
Okay. James?
Before I actually...
Good morning, Karen. Welcome. Welcome. Hi.
Hi.
Nice to
Thank
have you
you.
join us. Yes.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. Yes, James?
Yes, so I shall just give my brief concept, my 2 cents worth about the world in transition.
Sure.
I'm occupied this planet for a millennium. And throughout those times, from the Bible story of creation, where the world and he was placed in the Garden of Eden, He said that man sinned. So man sinned and did not follow God's will. Them to know all man has done, even what we call progress. All he's done really most of the times are going against laws of God, against laws of nature, and has brought the world to a situation today where it's so polluted that even life is threatened. The life of animals, trees, everything. So the man has put the world out of balance. And in God's creation, balance is a very important, harmony and balance is a very important part of our creation. So the world is out of balance, and all the climate changes and extreme weathers and things we're seeing is really the effects of the laws of nature, trying to bring the earth back in balance. And nature will in doing this, even if man does not follow the nature balance itself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we have prayed, millions of people around the world have prayed over the years, for thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. Or other sects say that there will be a kingdom established on earth and things like that. But we're praying for that, and there is some truth in that. And in fact, that is what the word is all about.
Right.
On the spiritual side, God to establish his kingdom on earth. But he will not do this by man brought the world to this point, and man's assistance is for the change.
Okay.
So man is given an option to follow God's will and to use the great concept of love. Because without love, nothing succeeds. After the First World War, we had the League of Nations, which was supposed to end all wars. And it was a then of the brotherhood of man and the fatherhood of God. Love thy neighbor concept, right? We have a responsibility, and God is in this. But what was missing from that was love. So, Second World War, and we had now the United Nations. Again, to end all wars. But we all have a Third World War, it seems like.
I certainly hope not, James. I certainly hope not.
I don't. God is going to take care of that. Trust me.
Yes.
So again, love was missing. So in the creation of this world, man must adopt a principle of love. Love is the that will hold this thing together. But there is a higher form of which we speak of, the divine love. The love which man has in his natural creation is a beautiful asset when it's already acted out properly. The world could be a Garden of Eden if we just love one another, follow those simple principles. But the love of God, which is we call the divine love, will keep things stable. Man's by himself is not a stable creation, and it could crumble even if you're put back in the Garden of Eden just so.
Okay.
This new world in transition, the love of God must also be present among a certain number of people to create that balance, to create that thing that will be lasting forever. So
Thank you.
That's the world in transition. Man has to learn how to love. Love is the answer, the key.
You get no argument from me here. Karen, can I ask you, my question to the gentleman before you joined us was about the whole concept of the world in transition. So would you like to share your thoughts?
Oh, certainly, thank you. The world has reached what is called a tipping point. And it has reached a tipping point in terms of the fact that man has lived his entire life primarily without listening to the will of God and getting guidance from God. And the earth has reached such a stage that there needs to be something done right now. And so what we are seeing and we are witnessing in front of us is as a result of man's actions throughout ages. Many changes we are witnessing in our lifetime, and that is because man has not gone to God to seek the answers. And so the time has come now where the earth must heal herself. She has been walked on and trampled on very harshly. And this is her attempt to heal herself through all the natural disasters, and so that we're seeing. So whilst we look at the changes and we may believe that they are negative, the earth is in fact healing herself, and also great blessings are going to come out of these things. Man is going to reach a sense of understanding that the world cannot continue as it's going. Many people are going to be seeking. They're going to be looking for answers, and that's how the world is going to change.
Mm-hmm. And therefore, you're saying that also that transition back to seeking God's word and listening to what He has said and following His word.
His will and His guidance.
His will and His guidance. And I think that,
get back to.
Yeah, this particular season that we're entering, Easter and so on, for me has always been proof positive of that divine love, because of that divine sacrifice. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to find out about this seminar and this talk. What are we going to learn? What are we going to be talking about? And what do you hope that people who take part in this, that they will take away? What is your biggest wish? So we'll discuss that when we come back after the break. We're chatting with members of the World in Transition talk and seminar coming up. These are the joint organizers of this seminar, and they are Michael Rudder, Karen Swanson, and James Tudor. Interesting look at love, and also taking a look at the world and how it is changing. But when it comes to this seminar, just how are they going to welcome us into the idea that the world is in transition? And I say that because there are many people who are kicking and screaming and not even accepting the whole thought of climate change, who are fighting against that for whatever reason. So how are you going to approach the skeptics amongst us? So the question is open to any of you, and let's take a look at the seminar.
Well, let me say first of all that when we speak of God's divine love, I myself have always wondered why the church and the Christianity focus so much on Jesus' death. You mentioned Easter coming up. And not on his life. In his life, he taught about love. He demonstrated love in his person. As I mentioned a little earlier, and when he spoke about love your neighbor as yourself, he didn't mean the father, brother, sister, uncle, aunt, baby, mother kind of love, but the divine love, especially as James enunciated. That energy, that love of the Father, which transforms ourselves. Now, that transformation doesn't start only with the physical. We understand that man is made up of the physical body, the spirit body, and the soul. We say God is soul, and man is made in the image of God. So we have a soul, and our soul is connected to God. So the divine love that flows into our soul, and that causes a change in our physical self, our relationship to other people. And the more of that love we receive, that energy of the Father, if you don't want to say love, divine love, is the energy of the Father flowing into our souls that makes the change among mankind. And it will also make a change in the way we use the resources of the earth. Now, we use the resources with some profligacy. We just, come in and go, well, we just use. We tear up the land to plant houses. There's less and less land on which to create, to grow food. So there has to be a balance, as James has mentioned earlier, between what we do and how we exist on this earth. And that balance is helped by this love that flows into our souls. Each one of us has a soul, and each one of us has the potential to receive that love. Now, that is one of the things, one of the many things Albert and Jean Fike will be talking about. These are the two principal persons who will be talking about the transformation of the earth. Now, we have Friday, the 8th, I think that's tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock at the Barbados Beach Club. They will be there to speak to the public in general. So the public is invited to come along and hear the presentation, to ask questions, to understand what they mean by this divine love and about this world moving into harmony. On Saturday and Sunday, they will teach Saturday morning and afternoon and Sunday afternoon, seminars, if you like, workshops on divine love and the transformation, giving their own experiences over decades of life, how this love has changed them and their relationship with others, and how it is possible for those who attend to begin to change, are already changing, and will change some more. So basically, it's tomorrow then, 7 o'clock in the evening, Barbados Beach Club, public session. And if you want to know more about how this transformation can take place through the divine love, it's Saturday morning and afternoon, 2 sessions, and the 3rd session on Sunday afternoon with James, with Albert, and Jean Fike.
Okay, and Karen, I had asked, about there will be those among us who will have their own thoughts, their own feelings, and so therefore, how are you going to get them to buy into this, because they're going to come with their own biases?
Yes, the truth of the matter is that truth is an individual thing. It's very relative. So what I may consider to be truth, someone else may say, no. I would say, I believe there's a God, and that's my truth. Someone else may say, no, I don't believe there's a God. So what we do through the program is we talk about our experiences, and other than that, we show people the effects of wanting to change the world. We can't want to change the world. How can we change the world if we don't start by changing ourselves? So it's important for us to share our experiences, and one of the things that happens at these sessions is that it is a very powerful, prayerful session. So what happens is that many people are touched by the environment when they go into there. There's a lot of magnificent, magical things that happen. I mean, in my own experiences. There are many, many blessings. We are surrounded by celestial angels. We are surrounded by the inflowing of God's love into our souls. And it really, you have to be there to experience it and to feel it. So often our minds are barriers to our souls. Our souls is where we have all our feelings, our emotions, our passions, our creativity, our love. And because we've been brought up so much, as brainwashed into thinking that the brain is all that we have, the mind is all that we have, and we don't pay attention to our emotions. But it's important for people to come and to experience. It's experiencing the situation that will get people to buy into it.
Okay.
Because we have had many, many experiences. That's why we're here. I'm leaving my family behind. I'm spending my money to come to Barbados because I believe there's value in what we have experienced. I want people to know about it. I want people to know about the truths of God's love because it has changed my life. And I'm not the same person I was 1 year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And I can see the changes. And even people around me can see the changes in me.
Right. And I like the word you use, magical. That's, yeah, I can tell. James, would you like to share with us? Yes?
Certainly. This weekend retreat is a part of a tour of many countries. We've had 3 retreats so far in the United States. Bob was fortunate and blessed for Al and Jean to come and visit us. And then they'll be going back to Miami to have a 4th session in the United States. Then off to Barcelona in Spain, and finally the whole of London. And the theme of this tour is called the Soul Awakening Retreats. So we're speaking about the soul. We're speaking about communicating with individuals about their soul and their consciousness and the power that we all use our soul and our relationship to God in a proper way.
Okay.
So we will share many truths, many surprising truths with persons, and they will find it reasonable and logical, rational. So I'm just trying to put my thoughts together here.
That's okay.
So yes, so we speak about the transition, and what I wish to share with you on that point is that we are not alone. We believe there's God, and there are the messengers of God who are all there to help us. So in this world of transit, there will be lots of assistance. Fear not. God and his angels from various spheres within the spiritual realms and other areas will come to assist man in this effort. So it is not something that we might have to do on ourselves, or we just don't have the knowledge and ability. If we look at the world right now, we can see there are some fantastic structures around the pyramids and various structures that even our technology today cannot construct these things. So that should be nice, that there is a power, there's a force out there that can do things on this earth that we man right now are not capable of doing.
Okay.
So that's one of the very important points that should come out through the seminar, that we are always connected, there are always resources, there's always inspiration, there's always knowledge, but finally there will also be physical assistance given.
Thank you. Thank you, James. So just to round up on, Michael, would you like to give your days and times again? I think you said tomorrow, Friday at 7 p.m.?
Yes, tomorrow Friday evening.
Evening.
Not morning. Evening, yes.
7 p.m.
That's 7 p.m., which is evening. 7 to 9. It's open to the public to come as Karen says, to experience, first of all, what it's like to be in the presence of the divine angels, to feel that divine love flowing, and to learn a little bit more about the way in which Al and Jean Fike, or hosts or seminar leaders, will be able to tell of their experience and how it's possible for all the audience to have similar experiences. What I want to say is just a few words. I believe that those who attend will subsequently be able to say, I was there when. And we
Understood.
expect a tremendous happening to take place. And
Thank
then
you.
Saturday, if you want to learn more about the divine love, we start again at 9 o'clock in the morning, obviously with a smaller group, we expect. We have the morning session, then the afternoon after lunch at 1:30 to 3:30 or so, or 4. And then Sunday afternoon, because we expect people to want to go to church on Sunday morning, so Sunday afternoon from 2 will be the final session. Learn more about this magical divine love.
And all
Love
at
of
the, I'm sorry, not crossing, all
Barbados,
at the Barbados Beach Club.
Barbados Beach Club, yes, on
Thank you so
Maxwell
much,
Coast Road.
Michael. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you,
Thank you for the
Karen and
time.
James. Stay safe.
Thank you
Take
for having
care.
us.
You're
God bless.
welcome.
We
More
hope
to-
to see you.
pleasure.
I'm going to try to see if I can pop in. It's a hectic weekend, but I'm going to try and see what I can do. Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you. We've got lots more to come right here as we take a trip to Southern Africa when we come back. Dr. KATLEGO MOTHUDI is one of the most interesting people that we have met across the link up. He's the managing director of the Board of Healthcare Funders of Southern Africa. And it's always a joy to see you, Dr. K. Nice to have you join us.
The same here, Peta. It's great to see you.
So it's been quite a journey these last 2 years, and I know that South Africa has certainly been impacted by the whole pandemic. Where are you now? What is the country like as the whole world opens back up?
We are in a similar position, Peta. About a week ago, our President Ramaphosa announced the end of the lockdown, which was under the Disaster Management Act. We counted 750 days that we are under these regulations. They decided that because the healthcare system was no longer under pressure, it was opportune that they opened up the country again. While that has been said, there are still a few restrictions, but this would be normalized into the normal legislation, into our National Health Act. So we are almost back to normal, save for a few guidelines regarding numbers in attendance for gatherings, the wearing of masks, for example, indoors, etc. But we're almost back to normal.
Almost. Now we are being faced with this new variant, the BA2. Is this the case there in South Africa?
So we had the Omicron variant from in our last wave, which started just before the summer break for us, which was around October, and we saw the peak just before the end of the year. In terms of how it affected us, we definitely saw quite a high number of infections. However, because of the previous waves and the number of people that firstly were infected, also because there was some traction with regards to the population that is already vaccinated, we did not see a lot of people with severe disease. While we recorded record number of daily infections, we had very low number of people that land up in hospital, and even a lower number of people who demised, which meant that there was already some immunity that was garnered from previous infections, as well as some of the people who were already vaccinated. It is actually on the back of these stats. We have now, I think, the 7-day rolling average of almost about 1,000 new infections a day. But a small percentage of people that end up in hospital. And I mean, just to also demonstrate, we've had, I think, 3 days last month where there were 0 deaths recorded in those days. And right now we teetering most of the days less than 5 deaths per day. And it's on the back of that while we still have the largely Omicron variant still active, its impact on the health of the population is actually low.
Wow, well that's good to know that you're trending downwards, because it was, those numbers were really scary over and you said 750 days. We really haven't realized how much time has passed.
Yes.
That's amazing, and that you're coming out of it now, which is good to know. But within your particular profession, your group, your organization, the healthcare funders, I'd be interested to know, how has it impacted the work of the group, the organization, and how has it changed, or has it, your operations?
With regards to the private healthcare funding space in South Africa and Southern Africa, there were a number of concerns, and I may have sounded this in our first discussion about 2 years ago. Obviously, the industry looks after people that are employed and who can afford to buy short cover. So the first, I would say, challenge was whether we'll be able to retain members while a lot of people became unemployed. We saw about a 1% reduction in the number of insured beneficiaries in our cohort, and we also concerned that the claims experience might put a dent on our reserves, and also that we saw the economy tanking in many areas. We were also concerned about the value of those reserves being dissolved by the economic impact of COVID. While we were looking at that, I think the first point of relief was that the claims experience initially went down because of the restrictions. We saw a whole lot of people staying home. A lot of consultations that would have taken place maybe for elective processes or even admissions were delayed. So we actually, the industry enjoyed some relief for a little bit in terms of the claims experience. In fact, we observed from a financial performance point of view, quite a number of these health insurance schemes were able to add on to the reserves in the first year. Having said that, what we think could also impact us downstream for those people who did not access treatment for ongoing health needs. For example, those people who have chronic illnesses. There might be those who, because of fear of contracting COVID, stayed home and did not consult with our practitioners. And we may then, maybe in the next few years, see some of those come back as complications. What if there were any positives? I would say the biggest positive that we observed from our angle was that we are in the middle of healthcare reform, trying to implement the national health insurance as our version of universal health coverage. Now, with COVID, all sectors were forced to work together, and I think there were many learnings from that. Healthcare is not just the business of governments or the state or the private sector. We had to put our hands together and work together. We were able to strengthen relationships in some quarters, and also develop new ways of working together. The second area that we were happy to see is that there were certain advancements in terms of technology. Because of the negative impact to access to healthcare services, we had to rely on technology. So there were some innovations in terms of virtual consultations, even virtual hospitalizations where there was remote monitoring of people who had COVID and could not be accommodated because the health system was under pressure. And those are just some of I think the positives, and we're hoping that we can carry these lessons further in terms of our healthcare reform, but also to bolster our day-to-day operations in the way that we deal with healthcare access.
Thank you. And how has COVID impacted you personally? I know that we were supposed to link up, I think it was around Christmas when you messaged me and you said, Peter, what irony of ironies, you said?
Yeah, yeah, that always happens, doesn't it? Yeah, I don't think there's anybody who would not have been spared the impact. We had one or two family members that we lost
I'm
to
sorry to
COVID.
hear.
And
Yes. Sorry.
and almost everybody in my family has had COVID to varying degrees, but fortunately, we were not as hard hit as other people that reportedly some families lost almost the entire family or family members. It has had an impact on a personal basis. But I think that the important thing is that we have embraced that these things happen. There was no way that we could have maybe prepared better on a personal level because we were observing whatever guidance that was meted by the government. Um, we are, I would say, thankful though that it could have been worse because
Yes.
we've had four waves, and to date, South Africa has officially reported just over 100,000 people that have died. It's estimated that the actual number is closer to 300,000, and that is
Wow.
calculated what we call excess that we do acknowledge that there are some people who could have demised and not have had access to testing, etc. But in the I think the broader scheme of things, we were not as hard hit as other areas, notably Europe, some portions in America, South America, etc. But a tragedy is a tragedy.
It is. And one is one too many, you know. But I'm so happy to see you and to see that you survived your ordeal, even though you've said it could have been worse. But it really shocked me when you said irony of ironies, and I said, what happened? And you said, I just been diagnosed with COVID. So I'm glad to see
Yeah.
you, and it's really nice to have you back. We're going to do this again because I would like a little, you know, later on down the road to really take a look at the what we've
Yeah.
learned part and how are you going to move going forward. But as you said, you're in transition right now with government and the universal health coverage and so on. So perhaps when that is finalized, we can get another opportunity to chat. Wishing
That would
you
be a
all the
pleasure.
best. Wishing you all the best, and please stay safe. And it's really good to see you, Dr. K.
Yeah, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you,
Okay.
Peta.
Dr. KATLEGO MOTHUDI from the Healthcare Funders of Southern Africa. He's the managing director of their board, and really always a very interesting chat. And it's certainly nice to see that countries are coming out of this. Yes, a little battered, a little scarred, but they're certainly coming out stronger and with more knowledge and experience on how to put a handle on this pandemic that goodness knows we're all in together. So we're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to wrap up today's show, but we're going to take a look at what today signifies for most of the countries in the world. April the 7th, World Health Day.
planet, our health. Our planet and our health are interrelated. For our health and well-being, we need access to clean water, clean air, nutritious food, an environment that facilitates our mental and physical well-being wherever we live, and quality health services for everyone, everywhere, and at all times. And we expect this on our planet, to which we have not paid enough attention. Our actions are depleting and polluting our natural resources, creating a crisis that threatens our health and very existence. The impact of climate change, floods, forest fires, droughts, intense rainfall, rise in temperature are causing huge sufferings, displacing and killing people, impacting their health and livelihood. Outbreaks of infectious diseases, trauma, injuries, heat strokes, malnutrition, and undernutrition resulting from food shortages due to crop failures are also related to climate change. Today, climate change has emerged as the single biggest threat. Our ever-expanding unplanned cities and habitation areas, changing food habits, unhealthy lifestyles are contributing to the growing numbers of people affected by life-threatening and debilitating diseases such as diabetes, heart ailments, respiratory illness, obesity, and road traffic injuries, to name a few. Every year, 13 million lives are lost globally due to avoidable environmental causes. Air pollution alone causes 2.4 million deaths in our region every year. 9.2 million people die from non-communicable diseases in the region every year. 1.6 million people die from tobacco use in the region every year. Additionally, tobacco farming and tobacco packaging add to environment and health hazards. These unfortunate deaths and sufferings also speak of the pressure and the state of our health systems. The ongoing pandemic has exposed these inequitable and unsustainable systems in which we exist. The pandemic has also provided an opportunity to build back better and greener. We must act now for our planet, our health. Protect and preserve nature. Promote afforestation. Improve air quality. Stop polluting agricultural practices. Promote sustainable farming. Protect drinking water supplies. Build climate-resilient and environmentally sustainable healthcare facilities. Ensure water and sanitation are integral to primary healthcare services which are accessible to all. Promote climate-resilient water, sanitation, and hygiene. Promote environmentally sustainable practices. Ensure quick and healthy energy transition. Rigorously enforce air quality standards. Increase investment in public transport infrastructure. Promote healthy and sustainable food systems. Build healthy, livable cities with green and healthy spaces that promote physical activity. Promote cleaner fuel for cooking. On World Health Day, WHO is calling on one and all to act together to protect our health and our planet for a healthier tomorrow.
Isn't that amazing? And when you think about our role in a lot of that over the years, you cannot say that the information is not there, that you were unaware. You know, basically we've been very unkind to Mother Nature, and I think in many ways she's rebelling. I remember in the first year that we were in the pandemic, 2020, when the world was literally in lockdown, you started seeing some incredible images from Venice. You saw, you know, the waterways, which are usually polluted and dark and grimy and grungy, all of a sudden they were clearing up and you could actually see fish swimming in them. You saw some states in China where you could see the sky for a change when normally it's usually clouded, polluted smoke. And smog in Los Angeles was cleared. You could actually see the sky, and some people were talking about how they could see the stars, something that we here take for granted. But I'd like to think that with all of the information that is being shared on a daily basis, we've heard it from our Prime Minister, who is one of the ardent supporters of literally let us rein back all of these bad practices so that, you know, climate change, because it's not going to be able to, I think, be stopped, but it can be halted. We can pull back and we can take advantage of the electric vehicles and less carbon footprint, and, you know, yes, which may be buzzwords, but they're there for a reason. And so today, on World Health Day, I thought that it would have been nice to take a look back, you know, where some of the countries that we link up with, where they've been and what they've learned and some of their solutions and where are they now. And so we had the opportunity to chat with Dr. Burgess and we chatted with Dr. MOTHUDI. And then there are others who are looking to love this planet and for us to love each other and to take advantage of that, you know, in every way possible, and to bring people together with the World in Transition seminar. So making connections today was a through theme, but I'm looking forward to next week, Thursday. Why, you may ask? Well, because next week, Thursday, yes, it's Maundy Thursday, I know, but it's also the 206th anniversary of the Bussa Rebellion. 206 years, because that took place over the course, I think it was 2 days, back in 1816. So we are going to have some notable experts here to talk to us about the Bussa Rebellion, as well as the whole idea of reparations. So some of the finest minds are going to be joining us right here on the link up, and I can't wait. Got a lot of reading up to do so that I know what I'm asking and what I'm talking about. But I'm looking forward to that. It's always an opportunity to learn and to share what we learn, because part of our mandate is, you know, to educate. And lest we forget, that's what we're here for. That's what we like to do. So thank you so much for joining me today on the link up. Don't forget, it's Thursdays. And always sit with your notepad and pen. You might learn something. I know I do every single Thursday. You stay safe and stay blessed. See you next Thursday.